Hi, I'm sitting here on June 24th, the feast of St. John the Baptist, with some freshly cut St. John's wort, which is traditionally associated with St. John the Baptist because it blooms around his feast day. The plant is said to symbolize the sun that dispels the darkness and the Baptist who proclaimed the coming of the light, the Son of God. Its Latin name is Hypericum perforatum, and that perforatum part refers to one of its most famous identification features, the tiny translucent dots in the leaves that look like tiny pinholes when you hold them up to the light. I went on a hike at Rathja Mountain today here in North Idaho, and I found some St. John's wort growing there. Once you learn to recognize this plant, you'll just start seeing it everywhere. It tends to really like sunny, open, and disturbed places. Here in Kootenai County, it can be very common in meadows, dry pastures, rangelands, roadsides, empty fields, and other disturbed areas. I found a whole bunch of it off the side of Highway 53, and just you really see it growing everywhere once you learn to recognize it. I'd avoid gathering it near roadsides though, even though it can be found abundantly there because it can absorb road pollution and it can be sprayed with herbicides. I prefer to gather it out in the national forest in open meadows if I'm going to use it medicinally. While it has a beautiful Catholic and medicinal history, it's actually considered an invasive weed here in North Idaho, so don't worry about taking too much. St. John the Baptist feast is celebrated on June 24th, right around midsummer when this plant often comes into bloom. Traditionally, people associated its golden flowers with the light of summer. And for Christians, that timing beautifully points to John the Baptist, the one who prepared the way for Christ, the true light. John said of Jesus, "He must increase, but I must decrease." And fittingly, right around this feast, after the height of summer, the days slowly begin to shorten. So even the timing of the feast becomes a little reminder of St. John the Baptist's humility. He decreases and he points us towards our Lord. Here's a few ways to identify St. John's wort. First, look for bright yellow flowers with 5 petals with lots of stamens. Second, look closely at the petals. You might see tiny dark or purple black dots, especially along the edges. And third, hold the leaves up to the light. You should see tiny translucent dots that look like perforations. These are oil glands, not actual holes. The plant's usually upright and branching, often about 1 to 3 foot tall. Make sure you're positive about your identification because we do have poisonous plants here in North Idaho. Another really fun identification tip is to pinch a fresh flower bud or blossom between your fingers, or you could rub it on your arm. And if it's St. John's wort at the right stage, it can leave a red or purple red stain. It's also why St. John's wort oil turns red when the fresh flowering tops are infused in oil. The red pigment that bleeds from the crushed yellow flowers symbolizes the blood of St. John, who was martyred by beheading by the order of Herod. So what is St. John's wort useful for? It has a very long history in traditional herbal medicine. Historically, people would use it for wounds, burns, bruises, sore muscles. It's great for nerve pain. One of the classical preparations that you can make with it is infusing the flowering tops in something like olive oil, and over time the oil will turn this beautiful deep red color. It's probably best known today taken internally for mood support, especially for mild depression. If you're using it internally, you could either make a tea with it or you could make a tincture, infusing it in vodka over 4 to 6 weeks and then strain it out. But this is also one of the herbs that needs a really big caution label. This isn't medical advice, but it can interact with a lot of medications, so don't take it internally if you're taking pharmaceuticals without talking to someone who understands both herbs and pharmaceuticals. It also can increase your sensitivity to sunlight in some people. Also, don't take it if you're pregnant or nursing without consulting a medical professional. While I was hiking at Rathja Mountain, I also saw a bunch of other useful plants. There was a lot of mullein with those tall flower stalks and soft fuzzy leaves. I saw yarrow, which is also known as soldier's wort. It's wonderful for stopping bleeding, as well as for taken internally for fevers. And I found some pineapple weed, which is a fun one that is like a little chamomile-like plant that likes to grow low to the ground, and it smells like pineapple when you crush it. Thanks, and happy feast day of St. John the Baptist.